Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to video game news for Wednesday, October 9th. Now I'm going to want to take just a moment here to make sure that today's stream is going alright, because the last stream, for one reason or another, I'm not really sure, I changed a whole bunch of settings, but who knows which one was needed to be changed. It was just dropping frames like crazy. And that may very well have nothing to do with my computer as much as it may have had something to do with my network. But yeah, it doesn't seem to me like that is happening. I've really underreported how big the story seemed to be as far as the updated ban list, not for Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, but for Magic the Gathering, and then the Commander Rules Committee effectively giving up on being a middleman as far as making rules, since Hasbro directly was the people in charge of making the ban list for all forms of official Magic the Gathering gameplay, tournament gameplay. So yeah, it doesn't look like we're dropping frames, so we can move on to that. So on top of that problem, there also was a problem with my macro, which I didn't work on at all today. Dragon Ball Sparking Zero seems to have launched at a very high number here, so a lot of people enthusiastic about it. I think it was the guy that would say next time on Dragon Ball Z, the narrator on the English dub of Dragon Ball Z passed away a few days ago, and so maybe that in part has also re-inspired some enthusiasm. But also I just think we've hit a point where a lot of people who are fans of Dragon Ball Z, who grew up watching it, are either reaching a point where they have some extra money or extra time, and are just revisiting that fandom, or have been fans all along, probably mostly revisiting the fandom. So it does feel like the Dragon Ball universe is fairly hot right now as far as what I'm seeing people talk about. Of course, the problem with that is a lot of what I see is just like my personal Facebook, so it may very well be that I'm just getting advertised Dragon Ball stuff because Dragon Ball is advertising itself. But yeah, so because of the episode effectively being lost, it's up there, but it's really about the only first hour of a 2-hour stream, and it's probably not worth watching. We're gonna start all over again, which coincidentally works very nicely with the macro being broken, because tabs are just getting closed like crazy. Like, all of the tabs seem to be closed this time, and I just don't know why that would have happened. That seems incredibly crazy. The Silent Hill 2 remake is out, but clearly people aren't really rushing to play it at the 64th of the top 100 concurrent 24-hour peak players. Now, maybe it just came out like an hour ago, but I don't think that's the case. But yeah, we still very much have a case where highly reviewed games by mainstream video game journalists often have no connection to actual enthusiasm as far as people buying games and playing games. But at least we have hit a point where there's a couple of big name games that have come out in this past week and made it into the top 100, so there is at least a little bit more to talk about. This Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 is very far from its peak, but still seems like a few people are playing it. It probably isn't that long of a game, and probably doesn't have a lot of reason to replay it. Deadlock is still going to be high, and like so many other MOBA style games, deadlock is just always going to be high, even if it just maintains a fan base of 80,000 bots or players. You know, you're just not going to lose large numbers there like you might in Space Marine 2, which seems to be happening. And then just disasters of my own making for the most part are happening, in that I'm still doing this whole house remodeling thing and the bills are running in. The Amazon Prime Big Day sale certainly coming at a bad time too, but yeah, it didn't spend too much there. Basically bought just a bookcase while it was on sale because I'm redecorating, obviously, and trying to better organize it. One of the things I did buy is a new Tuya enabled smart video doorbell to replace the new one I got like less than a month ago, and I have only about a week to potentially return that one, and we'll see if I have to pay way too much to send it back to China, since these are straight up getting sent from China, and that whole Chinese postage scam is very much still in effect. It's a scam being run by the Chinese government, effectively, where it's super cheap, like pennies, to mail something through Chinese mails, Chinese postage, to America. But to return any broken projects or any kind of garbage product that doesn't quite work, which isn't even really what I call the video doorbell I'm thinking about sending back, you have to pay the United States post office fees, which easily can go from $50 to $100. And so if you've bought a $20 device and you're going to have to pay $100 to send it back to get a full refund of $20, you've just wasted $80. And you could die on that principle, but most people won't. Inherently, it becomes even more scammy, where you will be sent a completely different product, and then they will demand that you send back the product to get a refund, or you'll be sent nothing at all and they'll claim you received it anyways. Sometimes that is just porch pirates actually stealing the device off your porch, but sometimes that is just a scam too. And that's one thing that Amazon is not getting better about, certainly, is that, particularly if you're talking Tuya enabled smart devices, which are mostly built for the Chinese audience and all of them are made in China, you're not getting that extra protection of you can return this to Amazon.com and get a refund in a lot of cases. The first video doorbell I got wasn't quite working exactly how I wanted it to work. It was showing me the wrong picture. It was showing me like pictures of it had taken of people ringing the doorbell 2 or 3 times previously, so you weren't getting the right picture in the app. The app itself has no integration. The new one I got still has a lot more features, but still not really a lot of integration into it. I can do a tiny amount with the new one I got. I could do absolutely nothing with the first one I got, but I'm still not able to get it to really do anything I wanted to do. So unfortunately, it can't send a signal when it detects motion or starts recording or takes a picture to open up my smart curtains, which is like a really basic thing. It's like somebody walks up to the door, I want the curtains, which are slow, to start opening because I'm going to walk to the door, even if it's just a package. Now, on the new one, there is a gate button, and you can detect if the gate button has been pressed. So if somebody manually presses the gate unlock button, that could open the curtains, and then you can just have the curtains be labeled as the gate button. You could also do that for a door unlock button. The difference there being that the wiring on the back of the camera part would be a little bit weird. Although, weirdly, I don't even know where you would wire the gate button, because the software itself is not really directly connected to the hardware. The hardware is a lot of this interchangeable, no-name branded stuff, where one company, I'm mostly running with Onlyo Smart for these two products, and that seems to be about the standard one that sells on Amazon. There probably are some better ones if you went to AliExpress and just gambled a little bit more as far as the people programming it slightly differently. The newest one I got actually has a root login via telnet with no password, so it's just completely insecure as a device. Now, I don't know what you really could do with the device. You'd have to make a custom package. You'd have to find a way to upload that custom package via telnet, which maybe you could do that through FTP, and then you would have to run that custom package. There's only a few parts of the Linux operating system that are read-write compatible in it, but the fact that you just can't even change the password because the password files, what's called the /etc/shadow file in Linux, where that's where the passwords are stored, even though you can't directly edit it, it's read-only. So yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out some kind of firewall or something to just double check that telnet can't be reached. It really wouldn't have been able to be reached from the internet anyways, but if one device got compromised, then it could compromise another device from inside my network. That would be great. That would be a huge issue. Not great. It's the opposite of good. But yeah, and this newest doorbell also can connect to network connected real-time streaming protocol devices, theoretically cameras and or network video recorders. Probably it's more designed just for cameras, and really only for 3 brands. But yeah, I haven't actually gotten it to work with that. I haven't actually gotten it to work with several things, so who knows, I might end up just sending back the other one too. Unfortunately, I think like I'm gonna maybe get a slight improvement, but not get everything I would want with this newest video doorbell, and I won't get everything I want probably for years, because they're just slow to make new programs. They don't put updates for existing software, they just sell new hardware, and maybe that new hardware will have new software in it, but they don't really talk about the new software. So you're mostly looking at screenshots on Amazon as far as what does the button look like, button layout look like on this device, and a lot of it is just experimental. That being said, if you want a video doorbell with actual screens, there's not a non-Chinese solution there. They're just not that common or that wanted in the West, and a Ring doorbell will just go to your cell phone. I don't know why people think their cell phones are always plugged in and powered up, but yeah, the current setup of having like a echo in your house, so when the Ring doorbell rings, it would actually ring, and even then you would have to have like an echo show to actually see the camera feed if your cell phone happens to be dead or your network is disconnected. So yeah, I guess the question also comes down to just how important is a doorbell really. But yeah, I spent most of yesterday messing with the doorbell. I'll spend a lot of today messing with the doorbell too. My network video recorder, which is the CCTV, closed circuit television security system has a analog CVBS output, and the doorbell will take that as an input. So that'll be an interesting thing to see what happens there, as far as, am I going to get all of the cameras treated as one in tiny little squares, or can I configure it some other way, and whether or not that's really worth it. The video doorbell, though, does not have a bail jack output directly connected to it, so I don't think I could do it the opposite way, although maybe. I tried that before and it didn't really work, though. I don't think I want to really experiment with that. But yeah, that's what I've been working on outside of Prime Day shopping, which this year's Prime Day big sale was terrible. There was very little new or exciting there, and of what I had already thought about buying, like very little changed in prices. Now, a lot of that has to do with just being way over budget. If I was under budget, I would have bought a bunch of like $13 to $10 UHD DVDs and continued down the path of just owning some of those. But as far as actually getting a TV, which I could have used, I'm over budget for that to get a really nice 4K TV, or a 4K UHD Blu-ray player. I'm over budget on that too, so yeah. I think I mostly just got a bookshelf. And as far as the video doorbell, the newest one, not really working. I've just thrown in the towel, and I'm just going to get a completely separate motion detector and install that. I'll install it further away, so it will detect people when they're closer, further away from the front door, and that will just be a way of activating the curtains opening. Unfortunately, though, a new device, new motion detector, assuming it works, still doesn't have a way of previously activating the video doorbell to get it to start recording. But this new one is actually fairly good about having a high level of sensitivity when it sees motion to start recording, and it actually has a rollback on it, whereas the first one I got did not have a pre-record rollback to it. So every single image on the first one was getting people as they're putting their finger on the doorbell, so you're getting maybe the side profile of their face. Many times they're just so far forward that you're barely seeing anything from them, of them. So it was not good security. This first one, it just in general didn't work. Anyways, that's 18 minutes of not talking about video games, which noticeably I haven't played any video games. I'm still theoretically supposed to be playing Punch Club, but yeah. I don't know what really happened with the stream last time. I noticed that like the DPI scaling was turned up on Windows and several other video settings, so I'm just turned off a bunch of video settings to try and make it run smoother. It might very well be the case that I have a smart outlet on my third monitor to turn it off, because it doesn't, unlike TVs, have a remote that could turn it off more smoothly. So that might have broken it too. Yeah. Oh, speaking of turning things off, apparently the smart outlets, not smart outlets, the smart meters that electric companies use nowadays only work for about 5 years, and then they have to come and replace them. And I'm not sure if that was the case with old meters or not, but Yeah, I got an interesting notification that for about 5 minutes the power is going to be out at my house, and yeah, somebody was just pulling out one smart meter and putting in another one. I assume it just worn out. There is some kind of like optical connector standard you can put on smart meters to read their input and output, but I have not seen any device. I haven't found one yet that actually you could connect to it. That would be fairly intriguing to get just like a direct overall signal of how much power is being spent. It's not going to give you any kind of individualized things. The span.io still is almost certainly way better than that, but span.io requires replacing your entire circuit box. It's definitely more a thing I'd recommend for new construction. So as far as our chart and enthusiasm, banana is still very strong, deadlock is very strong, and we're looking for Silent Hill 2 to see if it has made it up to this level, and it hasn't. It probably wouldn't. Now, inherently, these, I still haven't figured out a way to have these highlight what day they were. But I've been running this new chart for I think about 3 months, and you are running into this problem already where the lowest thing has 1,558 points. You get 100 points every time I run the macro and sample. If you're in the first spot, you get, I guess, 73 points. If you're in the 73rd, well, no, it would be 27th spot. So, and it keeps going, but the chart just is cut off there for ease of visibility. So to even get to this point, you would have to be the #1 game for like 15 sample days, 3 weeks effectively. You could certainly be somewhere in the middle and gain points up to that, but the relevancy factor there is still very much in question. It's always in question. Is this useful information or not? But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. Although it almost seems accurate too, that if a game is going to be super new and super popular, like Banana, its consistent popularity and player base is going to have to be established over a fairly long period of time, several weeks, instead of flash in the pan games, where ironically a lot of games should be talked about even though they are flash in the pan games, in that they only sell very highly for a week or two. People play it, beat it, get tired of it, and move on. And that because a chart like this and the SteamDB chart from which it's based can't factor in those elements and that concept, multiplayer games like Counter-Strike 2 are just always going to have a significant advantage over any kind of single player game. Anyways, moving on. I'm also going to be all over the board here, and I imagine a lot of these tabs are going to end up having to reload because of me logging in, logging out to change the video settings. Metaphor v Fantasio in particular might be a great example of yet another game that should be talked about a little bit more and isn't. It's not out yet. We'll have to see. And then let's see if there's anything here worth mentioning. This isn't the built in the StarCraft, what, Stargate universe game is it? It was this pretty bad Stargate game. It came out a few months ago and didn't really have any advertisements at all, so I don't think many people even heard about it. We're back to seeing the community recommends, and here first thing we see is a full motion video live action harem dating visual novel game would be what I suspect it is. Then you have Kind Words 2, which is a case where you're encouraged to type nice things to other people. Dungeon Tycoon looks like a Minecraft clone, although it may be slightly more close to something like Dungeon Master at the actual look of it. Yeah, it looks a little bit more like Dungeon Master than Minecraft. It's just pixely like Minecraft. Killing Antidote. Looks like it's a attractive character. Interesting, the community recommends it, but the actual community reviews on the Killing Antidote puts it at a very mixed level. Seems like it's a game that's more focused on dressing up the protagonist than locking down that horror first-person shooter elements. Let's see. Where were we? Yeah, this game I think I overlooked. This one is mixed. It doesn't seem like it is actually based on Stargates, even though you have a Stargate looking device there. So certainly it is a question as far as should we follow the community recommendations. Inherently, I think community recommendations here are just a way for the algorithm to decide that it has a subsection of games it wants to promote, and then it's limiting that subsection to games that have at least a few people who have written something nice about it. Because that seems like that's the entirety of what community recommends here, is that one person who may have only played a few hours of game wrote a positive review. Now, I'm not sure they're really curating a positive review. Yeah, this one says 13 people found the review helpful. But also, if we look at these numbers down here, as far as how many people think it's useful, it's showing really small numbers. Here you have a decent number of people, 50 found it. Yeah, 151 people found this review useful. Sorry, I went quiet there. But sometimes they're just recommending games that one person wrote a positive review and 7 people found useful, so yep. It is still clearly starting from a perspective of games that the algorithm, for one reason or another, wants to recommend. Some of that very possibly because somebody is paying to get their game promoted with a certain number of impressions. I'm surprised. we've seen here as far as the top sellers with Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and Silent Hill 2 and Throne of Liberty all beating. Let's see, coming out. It's already rated very positively, but it's not out until tomorrow. I don't know how that happens. This undisputed boxing game. I do want to find an actual good boxing game that is a direct control boxing game, unlike Punch Club, which is a management game. But I am also concerned about it being 54% positive more recently, so not sure about that. Until Dawn, we can go ahead and put on the wish list. But the Steam Deck, our precious Steam Deck, has been knocked down to the 5th spot. Metaphor ReFantagio may be moving up to replace it. And at a certain level, maybe that's correct that the hardware, which really shouldn't be compared at all, shouldn't be in the top sellers list in the first place. Since you're really comparing apples to oranges there. But also it makes a lot of sense that now is just not really a great time that you would want to this is a popular upcoming game. Yep. Now is really not the time to buy a Steam Deck. It's just a high possibility that there will be an updated version in the next 6 months. Unless you really need one. Unless you've got to get one before Christmas. Plus, the sale that happened most recently for Steam Decks, the refurb Steam Deck, probably satisfied demand quite a bit. Here's an interesting thing: Halloween Point Shop Collection being promoted. So you can spend points, which I do have kind of a near infinite number of points to spend on Halloween collections that I would never use at all. Yep. I still definitely think it is a case that the vast majority of people are going to have a huge balance of points and never use them. Star Ocean Wings for Hire is not a sequel to a game I was thinking it was. Alright, so we're going to see if this takes us to Video Games Chronicles, but I don't think it really is. I think what it's going to do is immediately take me to a whole bunch of Steam games, which we'll look at the Steam games later. And so I am going to just have to jump around, I think, quite a bit here. Astrobot's 87th soundtrack is available on streaming platforms. And then we've introduced and trying to introduce gaming on Linux as news. Let's see if we can find what I did here. There's just a ton of tabs. You know, it probably wouldn't hurt. Let's see. It says there are no duplicate tabs right now. That is crazy. How can there be no duplicate tabs? So a lot of these stories are going to be older as far as Video Games Chronicles and all of them. So we're just going to go through them fairly quickly. Like Saudi Arabia considering a larger stake in Japanese developers. Most of these stories have not updated in any way since I talked about them on Monday, or since they first came out. Now Friday's stream might be a little bit better, might be a little bit worse. Things are going to start changing as far as how my schedule is affected, so theoretically I might have a better guaranteed time, assuming I wake up early enough to stream starting Friday and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday of future weeks. With that, that might at least get me more consistency as far as making these live streams. It's probably not going to help me any as far as making pre-recorded footage and airing and scheduling any pre-recorded footage. Let's see. Ubisoft has acknowledged the buyout reports, saying they regularly review options. They also celebrated their 35th anniversary, at least on Twitter, by just showing a bunch of pictures of fairly old and not very popular Prince of Persia games, missing the mark completely as far as the Sands of Time remake coming out. Halo's 343 has rebranded to just called, I believe, the Halo Studios, and multiple games are coming using the Unreal Engine 5 now, which makes a lot of sense. This almost certainly is the beginning of how a lot of first-person shooters should go. There is just not a real argument to use any other engine if you're making a first-person shooter dude bro style game, whether that's Halo or Gears of War or even Fortnite, which is visually different. There's going to be decreasing reasons to not use Unreal Engine, or at least use Unity engine, or at least use Godot engine. Using an in-house engine is going to make less and less sense. Some of that is almost certainly a direct effect of people getting laid off and new people being hired to replace them. Somebody fresh out of college is not going to know how your in-house engine works or care to know how your in-house engine works. They're going to have been trained to use Unreal Engine or more industry standard third-party engines. And yeah, they're not going to be worth the retraining to use an in-house engine that's not even as good. Unreal Engine has drastically improved with Unreal Engine 5 also, so there's still room for a lot of improvement, I imagine, but there's definitely some improvement that they deserve some applause for. The sued Switch mod chip seller has just legally denied all the claims, even though he has stupidly still not found a new lawyer and is likely setting himself up to either pull off a 10D chess, 5D chess style trick and beat Nintendo, which I think the odds of that are extremely low, somewhere around 0.0001% chance there, or he's going to end up getting thrown in jail, which personally I still don't feel like financial crimes really deserve people being thrown in prison. But they have, with more recent circumvention device laws, Nintendo has found ways to throw people in the United States in jail for making mod chips and circumvention devices and chip rippers, ROM rippers. But yeah, personally I think those kinds of financial civil crimes should end up in maybe house arrest, huge fines without the possibility of debtor's prisons to throw you in a prison, garnished wages, things like that. Make Nintendo go after people for after getting millions of dollars in judgments, in the same way that like people have to go after people for child support. Make it difficult and not really worth the time, and not wasting prison systems, finances, and the government resources as much. Maybe clogging up the courts, but whatever. Then those would be different courts anyways. Moving on, Silent Hill 2 awards a trophy for turning back and trying to leave Silent Hill. EA Sports FC25 has topped the UK chart in a strong month of new releases. Space Marine, Astrobot 2, or Space Marine 2, Astrobot, NBA 2K25, and Legend and Zelda Echoes of Wisdom also have debuted last month. Zelda Echoes of Wisdom not really getting talked about much. I'm not hearing anybody scream and shout that it's a terrible game, or that it's woke, or that it has DEI in it, or something ridiculous like that. But it does seem like it probably is just more of a cutesy game targeting a slightly younger audience. Which the art styles are very much in conflict between something like Tears of the Kingdom and Echoes of Wisdom. But then the gameplay styles are also fairly in conflict, and I kind of feel like in the gameplay styles, I would like to see them move slightly closer to Echoes of Wisdom, but somewhere in the middle there. Maybe move the gameplay style to be mostly Echoes of Wisdom with a little bit of the more open world and the cooking and the climbing gameplay mechanics of Tears of the Kingdom. Although most of those mechanics really did just feel fairly gimmicky and just not in line with what Zelda really has done in its previous games. Like, it didn't feel quite Zelda-y enough when I played Breath of the Wild, and didn't even finish Breath of the Wild. And yeah, that's what really lost me there. Sega has announced an Alien Isolation sequel. Assassin's Creed Mirage is coming to Steam this month. This is a new game set more to feel like the very first Assassin's Creed game, and less, severely less, like the current style of Assassin's Creed games. And certainly this is the kind of game that, if voting with your dollar really worked, which it probably doesn't, this would be the kind of game people should buy and maybe even pre-order, to say, hey, we want Assassin's Creed games to actually feel like Assassin's Creed games. That being said, I'm sure Ubisoft has numbers and charts they can use to say no amount of sales of Mirage is going to convince them to drastically pivot from their current more game as a service style of development. Yeah, I just don't think that's gonna happen. They're probably pot committed. Although, if Mirage did sell very well, and then you saw failure after failure of Assassin's Creed games, after the fourth or fifth one, maybe they'd get the message, but probably not, knowing Ubisoft. And if there's just a failure of the Japanese Assassin's Creed game that's coming out, there's so many other people have complained about so many other things that you could see Ubisoft blaming any failure on that controversy versus anything else. Activision has released a Call of Duty's Black Ops 6 launch trailer, if you want to check that out. The original Silent Hill 2 is very happy, quote unquote, with the Bloober remake. In particular, he was talking about the over-the-shoulder perspective. But yeah. And it still is very much the case that just seeing this pool and just seeing enemies to deal with makes Silent Hill make more sense to me than what all the other screenshots have shown me, which is just him on the street with some buildings on the side. Now, I wouldn't be surprised though if it is much more of a adventure game and you have very few bullets and very few weapons in Silent Hill 2. I don't think it's getting anywhere close to like a Resident Evil style game where you just effectively have infinite bullets. I think you mostly do end up beating these monsters with a stick more than bullets. Google has been ordered to open up its Android App Store to competitors, and it will have to carry third-party app stores and provide access to the Google Play catalog of apps to other app stores, which this is a huge deal that would last for a 3-year period at least. It's a big game changer and big win, mostly for Epic, who was pushing this lawsuit. I haven't heard any updates, so this might very well be more finalized, or it might be a case that would have to go to the Supreme Court, and who knows what would happen there. There is also actual consideration, I think due to another case, of breaking up Google in several different factors. Although they are certainly just late to the party. Breaking up Google 5-10 years ago would have been much more impactful than breaking up Google now, which still would be impactful, but you could see a Google search engine company surviving, and then Google AdSense would almost certainly survive, and then you might see other services such as YouTube just become incredibly over monetized to make up the difference, make up the cost to a crazy level. Like, nothing really stops YouTube from saying you have to pay $1 to watch every single video on here, or you have to pay to upload a video on YouTube. But yeah, it could be incredibly over monetized, even more than it already is. Seems like they're hiding skip buttons at this point, on top of fighting uBlock Origin and other extensions that would be ad blockers. Free-to-play Sonic Rumble won't have gacha mechanics because the West doesn't like them, is the story here. The game will have no pay-to-win elements, Sega says. Which, yeah, I guess I agree with that. I'd say the average person, if they even know what a gacha mechanic is, don't like them. The idea of paying even in-game currency instead of real-world money to obtain something randomly selected based on some kind of percentage chance is very wasteful financially and time-wise. It just doesn't inherently ever really work. They are 100% stall mechanics used in mobile games. Memento Mori, which I'm still playing, has gacha mechanics as a character collector, and like it really is just a stall method to make you come back every day and not beat the game in like a month and then never play it again. Although they don't have any ads, they have in-app purchases for diamonds, and they actually just kicked a bunch of people off, apparently for finding some kind of cheat or glitch or mod to give them infinite diamonds. Usually games don't even bother to ban cheaters, but since Memento Mori, I guess, is more of a player versus player setup, it does make a lot of sense to maintain credibility. And if you're seeing people having infinite characters because they have infinite premium currency, that would put them at the top of leaderboards and make a very unfair scenario for player versus player. A former Bethesda lead artist says he quit during Starfield's development because the team had grown too much. There were so many meetings, and it wasn't the way I like to build games. Well, that seems like a very valid and personal response. Perhaps you are a little foolhardily to quit a company right now in particular because the team had grown too much. But I certainly could believe that Bethesda development of games does involve far too many people, and none of them really have a vision. Todd Howard theoretically is supposed to have a vision there, but I don't think he really did or does. And that certainly is a case where you would come out with a game like Starfield, which seems listless and seems to not really have a purpose. I certainly in general could understand programmers and game developers in general just being more solitary and not wanting to take on ridiculous meetings. Nobody likes meetings. Red Dead Redemption and Undead Nightmare have been announced for PC. This has been one of the worst kept secrets for years now, but it has taken them certainly a long time to actually release the announcement. The game and the expansion will be released in October, finally making it a much better situation if you wanted to play Red Dead Redemption 1 on PC, since you may have never played it. I've never played it. And then Red Dead Redemption 2. Undead Nightmare still would be kind of weird as far as a middle attempt there. And I don't believe this still fixes the issue of Red Dead Revolver, which theoretically is the first game in the Red Dead trilogy, but it's also not the same character and not really worth playing. I don't think they could remaster it well enough for it to make sense. Yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that. This might be the point where we're actually covering new news to me. Little Big Planet 3 and Little Big Planet DLC are being delisted from the PlayStation Store. They're being pulled from sale later this month. So all the success of Astrobot inherently getting contrasted with the fact that Little Big Planet 3 is being pulled. And frankly, I think a lot of Little Big Planet content has been pulled at this point. But yeah, that certainly doesn't speak well towards the PlayStation being kid-friendly, and that even old kind of kid-friendly games are being delisted. It doesn't speak well that any games are being delisted. Hotel Barcelona has been delayed to next year. This was a collaboration between Swery65 and Suda51, which I don't think we really have a clue as to what that really is going to be. You have one weird developer who made Deadly Premonition, and one weird developer who made No More Heroes. And those two weirdnesses combined may or may not lead to something interesting. Generally, when you have avant-garde artists, they really should be more of a solo act, and video games creates a unique opportunity for collaboration more than a lot of other forms of art. But yeah, Hotel Barcelona has been talked about a lot. The Rime Studio, which I believe this is a game I covered on my channel, Tequila Works, has confirmed layoffs and game cancellation. The game company has been restructuring to focus on the development of a single title. Rime wasn't a terrible game, it just kind of ended weirdly. Like it just didn't have an amazing feel to it or an amazing experience to it. I think the gameplay mechanic itself was not particularly that fun, which is a shame, because when you saw screenshots of Rime, which is like this felt like, oh, this could be a PC Zelda style game, since there is not a lot of Zelda style games and not any actual Zelda games on PC other than through emulation. But yeah, I just don't think it played too well or had that much content to it. Which that happens with a lot of small indie games, is that they might look very visually attractive and catch your attention, but then the actual experience might be a little bit dull, a little bit rough, and then you get a lot of players only get a third of the way through the game and then they don't finish it, and or they do finish it and they're just not really satisfied by the way it's finished, and as such it just becomes kind of irrelevant. A new Nintendo Switch system update to improve stability is what it's saying it does. I'm not sure if it is doing anything else. Sony has started selling refurbished PS5 consoles starting at a price of $350. That is for the discless version. I believe the refurbished version price is closer to somewhere around 420. Nope, 389 pounds. No, in the US, a refurbished PS5 with disk drive costs $400. And the discless versions, slim versions, are currently discounted in non-refurbished versions. It is probably a better offering, though, if you just wanted to get into PS5 cheap at $350. Although I'm not sure the game lineup is good enough there to even justify that price. And it is certainly backward thinking at this point, instead of looking forward and saving up for the next Nintendo console, or saving up for a PS5 Pro, or saving up for potentially even a PS6 in a couple of years, or saving up for a Steam Deck or a gaming PC, which would be my main recommendations. Universal and Sega are making a Shinobi movie. The Extraction director Sam Hargrave will direct the film. So we're getting an announcement for yet another video game based movie. We'll see how that goes. This is definitely, I think, one of those movies that could either go off the rails and be called Shinobi and have nothing to do with any references or Easter eggs to Shinobi as a game series, which I've never played it, so I have no idea what references you would make there. Or this could just also be a movie that gets canceled like so many other movies, or it could be just an awful movie that doesn't get canceled like the Borderlands movie. I guess technically that might be the first major video game movie to announce itself since the major failure of the Borderlands movie, and definitely is a case where they probably waited a couple extra weeks to get people to forget about the Borderlands movie. It's not even a movie that's so bad that people really have a reason to talk about it. Give it 6 more months and most people will have completely forgotten it was released in the first place. Apparently Ubisoft is being sued for allegedly sharing Ubisoft Store and Ubisoft Plus user data with Meta. The class action complaint claims Ubisoft sent user data to Facebook without permission. But yeah, I had to click on a valet service for car parking service, and in their little website app to click to get your car picked up, and I suppose I could have just gone up to the valet counter and not gone through the app, but at the bottom it has this whole legalese about this limits our liability, which inherently, agreeing to limiting someone's liability after the fact of somebody potentially driving your car or crashing your car is not going to be legal anyways. But yeah, these kinds of contract user agreements are so prevalent, it'd be kind of crazy for Ubisoft to have not just put in their contracts and user agreements that they could share data with whoever they chose at any point anyways. But apparently they didn't. On the face of it, though, as a gamer, I'm sure there's plenty of Ubisoft people. I'm not sure how many of them actually use Ubisoft Store or Ubisoft Plus, or are not happy with their information being shared with Facebook's owner, Meta. I'm sure that it's kind of a good thing that there still are people who are just upset that data is getting shared and spilled all over the place. Silent Hill 2 Remake was quickly patched because the Italian subtitles spoiled the ending. A distorted radio message early in the game is revealed to players in full. Although while I don't know the exact details of the Silent Hill 2 story, I kind of know the general basic things, so I don't think I would really be that surprised or upset if it was spoiled. That being said, I do also know that the ending is a little bit different and hints at a sequel, which my guess is Bloober Team in particular would like to make a Silent Hill series, Silent Hill 2 series, that would just continue to follow the characters and the story of Silent Hill 2 and probably ignore the idea of remaking either Silent Hill 1 or 3 or 4. I think there was even a 5. And yeah, just take the good one and go forward with that. That's still not going to fully make it just Bloober Team's playground if Konami really let them do that, though, because Konami is definitely going to have other companies license out Silent Hill as a concept and make other Silent Hill games, and Bloober Team is probably fine with that. But also Konami is going to want at least one Japanese feeling company to make a Silent Hill game on behalf of them, so that they feel like they aren't just handing over direct control of the entire Silent Hill franchise to Westerners, foreigners. Let's see, the original Stalker game will be released for the Switch next month. The Trilogy Bundle will arrive slightly earlier than expected. It might be an argument to try and go back and play some of the Stalker games, which are on my long list of games I planned on playing at some point. Let's see, Nintendo has revealed an interactive sound clock called Alarmo. It'll be available at retail in early 2025, priced at $100, but Switch Online members can get it now. Okay. First of all, Nintendo's charging a major premium here, so I want to see kind of what the hardware is on this. There are some Tuya-based smart alarms out there. They inherently range wildly in price and capability, as far as you can get a Tuya-based device that will monitor the brightness in a room and the temperature in a room and humidity, and have a clock on it, and be a small enough device that it just looks like a tiny little clock on the desk. I think that's probably your best way to go, is to get all those sensors and be able to trigger scenarios and automations based on those sensors. Or you can go the other route and you can have a wide range of fairly medium-sized alarm clocks that can have the alarm set and like the music played and things like that via the Tuya app. Although you really can't upload files, so it's not something as easy as upload this file to change the face of the way a alarm clock would look, or upload a music file to change the ringer tone. I haven't seen any smart clocks that actually have an LCD screen where the face is anywhere that detailed, as far as a matrix LCD screen, instead of what you usually get is a liquid crystal 8-segment style screen that just would have a clock on it. I have not found a single smart clock that integrates and has that smart features. that also has a bed shaker built in, which you're probably way better off having a bed shaker, particularly for kids, than having a smart clock at all. Having the smarts is fairly useless. It becomes even more useless when you get even to the fancier smart alarm clocks that have like AM, well, most of them don't have AM radio anymore, but they will have like FM radio playback capability or Bluetooth speaker capability, and a lot of them will have like different color LEDs you can change, but they tend not to really do any patterns or do anything flashy there. It's just, do you want the clock to look red or blue type questions. With FM radio, that's completely its own separate circuit, and the audio won't really transfer anyway. You might be able to tune the FM radio on the smart clock to different channels on different days. I don't know who would really need that. With Bluetooth, Bluetooth is completely separate from Tuya, and that's kind of a shame in general, because we aren't at the point right now where Bluetooth is capable of synchronizing different speakers, smart speakers, which a smart alarm clock would be in effect a smart speaker. But you can't with Bluetooth 5.3, which is the current standard. Bluetooth 6 was just announced. You can't like synchronize that and have music playing without any kind of weird delays to multiple devices. You really can't even do multiple devices, which is more of a thing you would really want to do than anything. And so I wouldn't recommend buying anything with Bluetooth at the moment as far as Bluetooth speakers, because Bluetooth 6.0 may very well be way more helpful. Most of the smart alarms probably could have you remotely set off an alarm, so if you're a parent trying to wake up kids, there's an advantage there as far as having a smart alarm to be passive aggressive and wake them up, although no guarantee that they won't just unplug the device or not hear it, throw a pillow over it, so it's not that helpful. Some smart alarms have cameras built in and are more spy devices or baby monitor devices, but overall they're a little too expensive for what they do, and this $100 unit also falls in that category, and just don't really tend to do too much. Your best bet is to get a good alarm clock with a bed shaker, and that's what you mostly need if you need an alarm clock, which I'm ignoring the elephant in the room. Who actually needs an alarm clock? If you plug in your phone at night, if your phone is turned on, and in almost every scenario, unless there's a power outage, your phone will be powered up and an alarm clock will go off on any kind of smartphone. This device only gets around that by being targeted at kids who are slightly too young to have smartphones. I have not seen any smart alarm clocks that look like alarm clocks and are reasonable in price that have any kind of built-in AI voice assistance, which those features are not even very interesting anyways. Because I guess the Echo Show might be an example of a device that could be treated as an alarm clock but is very expensive and will show time. This new smart doorbell I have has a screensaver mode that will show the time and will act as a digital photo frame, which arguably I haven't found any good digital photo frames that also integrate into Tuya, which is a shame, but I don't know how much you'd really integrate into it. But a digital photo frame works a lot better, particularly if it connects to the internet and connects to like an iCloud account or a Google Photos account or even a Amazon Photos account, in that people could be sending you and sharing photos with you, and then the photo frame would just automatically update. This doorbell does not update automatically, unfortunately, although I guess there's a small possibility I could waste a ton of time trying to hack it to do that. It'd be very hard to try to accomplish that for very low reward. But yeah, digital photo frames, probably a better argument as far as alarm clocks, but not really satisfying the need of actually being a loud thing that would wake people up. So that gets back to the bed shaker idea. The other thought, and unfortunately I haven't seen any surround sound receivers that are smart controllable outside of their own proprietary apps, but theoretically, if you could find a smart surround sound controller that would turn on a TV or play some sounds or turn up speakers, that would certainly rock the walls. If you had like a surround sound setup and the audio is getting fairly loud, although you don't want to get so loud that you're having heart attacks or blowing out your eardrums. It is kind of surprising there are so many smart TVs and none of them really have a timer to turn it on. It would make a lot of sense if you still are the type of person who's watching TV for an alarm to turn it on. And I guess I could do that. Like some of my smart TVs through the Google Assistant routines probably could turn on a TV and adjust the volumes and things like that, but I've not seen it work particularly well. But obviously I've put a lot of thoughts and a lot of time and effort into alarm clocks. I've bought several, and the smallest ones you can find for 2 of your smart devices, or the smallest smart alarm clocks. I don't know what other interface. Like maybe now there would be one that would work on Thread, which would be great because they're usually battery powered and in the Matter ecosystem. Maybe that would help. The smallest ones that can take temperature and sense the lightness. Being able to sense light tells you if it works accurately, which the ones I've found really don't work that accurately. They have to be really in the direct path of fairly bright light before they update at all. Like right next to a light bulb, effectively, or right next to a lamp. But it does tell you if somebody's actually turned on the lights and actually done something. Now they are coming out with some more bed monitors, which would be great for kids and the elderly to know if somebody has actually fallen out of bed or gotten out of bed. And that's really where a smart alarm clock would go. But yeah, right now, if you must get an alarm clock, which most people don't, I'd recommend cheap, small devices that just happen to have a clock on them, not something uniquely focused. And that's from the perspective that I'm going to come to this trailer as far as this Alarmo Nintendo sound clock, even though I'm fairly certain that the smart element on this is not going to be much. But we can see, looking at this, that there is a Wi-Fi signal here. There is what looks like a night mode, and there is a duck, which I have no idea what a duck would mean, or a bird. It wouldn't mean Bluetooth. And there's a alarm being pre-announced, which even a lot of alarm apps are kind of bad about that, in that well, in this case it's saying the alarm went off at 7:30 a.m. or it's going off the next day at 7:30 a.m. Well, it is 8 a.m. at the current time. It also says the date and then the little thing. I assume this is just a really squishy plastic around all of it too. And I'm assuming that this is just a matrix LCD screen that's going to play all kinds of animations. Effectively what this is Nintendo being infatuated with the iWatch, and certainly I guess that is your target audience here, and saying, how can we Nintendify the idea of having a whole bunch of different face plates and faces that you could install on smartwatches like the iWatch, and monetize that. I wouldn't be surprised if you have to have a Nintendo account to upload new faces to this, and you're paying Nintendo coins on top of paying $100. Let's see what else happens here. Right, should we turn on the closed captions? Yeah. This is the one where I probably should unmute it and listen to it. Let's see. Audio's up. How do we unmute this? There we go. Okay. So remember, they had made the Pokemon sleep tracker, and I can hear this, but you shouldn't be able to hear it for copyright reasons. So yeah, this might be the evolution of the sleep tracking Pokemon concept. And frankly, it might be just jealousy that Nintendo directly wants to compete against a Pokemon company, which they own a lot of. So my thought here is that this is potentially a millimeter wave presence sensor built in it that has been really programmed to tell the difference between. So it's straight up either a millimeter wave presence sensor or it's a LiDAR sensor at the top of this. But it says it's a motion sensor. But I don't know if that really is a passive infrared motion sensor. So you don't really hit the button, is what they're selling it at. It gets more annoying the longer you take to wake up. It probably gives up after a while. It's got 5 different alarms, which is kind of pathetically low for a $100 alarm clock. So what's the point of the Wi-Fi at this point? Is my question. And I wonder how good the speaker actually sounds, or if this is a case where the speaker is kind of cruddy and it only works well with their pre-selected alarm clocks. The screen is not showing anything particularly interesting either. It's limited by having an alarm clock and by having, so it's a spin dial at the top, which is, I assume that's an actual dial and not. The alarms are going to be free updates, they're not going to microtransaction you. Most alarm clocks, even smart ones, have either just basic physical buttons, but a lot of them nowadays, the fancier ones, have capacitive buttons, which honestly don't work very well because you don't have that physical feedback, but would reduce the possibility of. Apparently it can record your sleep time, and it can do an hourly chime. Weirdly though, it doesn't seem like it can act as a a photo thing. It won't show pictures in general, or a calendar, day of a week. One of the things that's weird about this in particular is you can press a button to turn it off. It's way too expensive, obviously, at $100. But it's not really a game or a toy, even. And so this might be the first time Nintendo, in its 100 years plus of history, that they have opted to make something that is not really that entertainment based. It also feels like it could be rightfully rejected pretty well as far as the creepiness factor of some kind of either passive infrared motion sensor, which it looks kind of like that, might be what it is. It doesn't look like it's a laser LiDAR. That would be very expensive for them to add, and it doesn't really look like a millimeter wave sensor, but it might be. There's also, I guess, the getting your groove on problem if you wait for the alarm to go off and then you're humping very fastly to the sounds of the alarm clock making a sound every time you move in bed. That is going to be an awkward use to explain to people. There's 35 scenes inspired by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, all I think completely owned by Nintendo. But no ability to play music. No Bluetooth as far as I can tell. No talking to it. So you can't just tell it to set an alarm. So it probably is a fairly large hassle to set an alarm. No integration within the Switch at all. Like, it might be an interesting device if it turned off the screen when you turned on your Nintendo Switch and started playing, or if it put even a different screen, second screen feature on there. But yeah, this is a weird device, to say the least. Let's see if, while we're here, since I talked a lot about Tuya smart alarms, see if I can find one to kind of contrast. Oh, can't type in smart alarm because you'll just get alarm panels. Let's go with alarm clock. Okay. So, these have been fairly prominent, easy to get on YouTube, on Amazon.com. But you'll see a lot of them like this that have these wake up lights that simulate the sun coming up and just giving you a better circadian rhythm. You may notice that a lot of these are not particularly well received, and you may notice that some of these are actually fairly overpriced. Here's one with a baby caregiving camera on it, which then kind of negates the need for it to actually have an alarm on it in the first place. Here's a new model I haven't seen yet. You'll see a lot of these different things and gimmicky ones. You'll have alarm clocks like this that are more for projection. And these are a lot of different programming built into the same physical boxes, so one device might be programmed completely different than the other, and you kind of just have to risk it. Use one with a wireless charging standard. A lot of them have USB on it. Notice that the alarm.io, the Alarmio, did not have any of that. Yeah, these are pretty much what I'd recommend. There's some ones here that are bigger, if you're going to get any of that, which is questionable, because if you really want a clock and don't need the alarm, you're better off just getting an atomic clock. They even have now Wi-Fi clocks that will get the time and update the time, but still be an analog spinning clock on the wall through actual 2.4 gigahertz frequencies. And that would be very advantageous if you don't have enough signal to get the wireless FM signal clock signals for atomic clocks. Yeah, I had one of these, and this one had a Bluetooth speaker, and the programming was just a little rough on it, and I just didn't really need it. Generally, I realized I didn't need an alarm clock that bad anyways. I think I also may have tried a couple of these. But yeah, I definitely went through it. They make some smaller ones specifically targeting little kids, but it's still not really that small. You actually are better off getting something with weather and a weather station setting, although with Tuya devices being Chinese based, you might get a device that only wants to tell you the weather in Celsius. But yeah, and then there's a whole bunch of other alarms. Generally what you're looking for when you're buying something, they'll have like upgraded version 2024, and that's what you'd look for. Until it's 2025, then you'd look for upgraded version 2025, because just every year. These are exactly what I would recommend though. You can get these at Walmart for about 20 bucks. They have the ones I have that look like this, have light sensors that aren't, again, not great, but they have temperature, they have humidity, real things that could be very helpful as far as getting signals. Some of them might be programmed to only do military time, if you have a problem with that. 1423 being shown here, but the price is certainly right here. Even the Bluetooth speaker EDUP one, which was, I believe, the brand I tried, is $55. Now, obviously, this one doesn't show you Nintendo stuff, doesn't play Nintendo sounds. In general, it's just kind of an annoying buzzing alarm clock, which is really all you need. Even this one is just going to be a Bluetooth speaker at most, or a FM radio at most. None of them are going to have the creepy monitoring your motion. You could certainly supplement a $20 alarm clock with a different Tuya, or otherwise a different smart motion detector, which putting a fall detector right around the edge of a bed in the ceiling, if you want to hardwire it, it's not a terrible thought. Putting a battery motion detector in a room, it's not a terrible thought, unless you find it creepy, which a lot of people will. So in comparison, you can get smart clocks for a lot cheaper than $100, and the Nintendo Alarmo is just not offering enough right now. I would expect it to have to support Bluetooth. I would expect it potentially to have at least FM radio as an option. I would expect it to have an app that would let you set alarm clocks, or a parental control that would let you see alarm clocks. I would expect it to have some kind of functionality where after, say, 5 minutes of the alarm being off and the person not moving, you alert the parents, which is one of the thoughts with a smart alarm clock or a motion sensor, is to see, hey, why is this alarm going off and nobody's waking up? But yeah, I don't think the Alarmo is doing any of that. And sure, if you throw in a nicely designed LCD screen that has an alarm functionality and has a dial and a button at the top and has a speaker and also has a motion detector, you would struggle to spend less than $100 if buying those components individually. Nintendo buying them in bulk wouldn't struggle to reach that price point. But that is just a testament to it being an over-designed piece of e-waste more than anything. But this also might be a case that this is something like the Nintendo Minis, in that they're only going to make a small run. Very possibly some third-party developer already created this device and pitched Nintendo on it, and they're just putting their brand on it and label on it, even though the story said that it was actually designed from an internal Nintendo employee. This may very well be a case of them just being nice to the Nintendo employee too, and putting it out for sale in small numbers. Moving on, back to video game news. I went on a rant there. Xbox is reportedly launching a new, more expensive wireless headset this month. The updated headset will cost $110, so only $10 more than the alarm clock for a wireless headset. Now is a bad time to buy anything that's wireless, because this almost certainly isn't going to have Bluetooth 6.0. One of the things about Bluetooth 6.0, outside of its ability to sync and share speakers, in this case headphones, is that there is an improvement in the standard as far as latency in the audio too. So there's always been latency in Bluetooth, and until recent iterations of Bluetooth 5, version 5 at least, the quality has been fairly bad around Bluetooth 2. And I would say almost every major version of Bluetooth has been just a whole new protocol using Bluetooth as a name, which, heck, if you have to start over from scratch to make something better, then do it. It is backward compatible, at least. But yeah, now's a bad time, certainly, to buy any wireless headphones. And I'm not sure you really need wireless headphones, because I mean, you're just adding more wireless things with wireless controllers. Yeah, I guess if you're far away from the TV, it makes some sense. But I've never really liked the idea of being far away from a TV and then putting on headphones. Either you're going to have a good experience or you're not. And if you're wearing headphones, you might as well just be in a different room with a different TV. Of course, that's elitist to say that there's plenty of people that have only one TV in the house and do have to be quiet. Plenty of people with upstairs, downstairs neighbors that don't like noise, but certainly not a lifestyle I think people should strive to. I think people should strive to big TVs with surround sounds and just having that full, as close to a theater experience, if not better than the current experience you would get at a theater. But yeah, a lot of people don't reach that goal. Certainly, a lot of people can't reach that goal. A lot of people don't care about sound, although at a certain point, why have headphones specifically focused around Xbox when you could potentially just have Bluetooth earbuds and spend another $20 to buy a dongle that would just transmit the audio from a TV or Xbox to Bluetooth earbuds. Let's see, October's PlayStation Plus game catalog and classic titles have been announced, including Dead Island 2, which kind of quick to be forgotten about, 2 Points Campus, Dino Crisis, and Siren. Let's see, they're going for more of the horror aspect, I guess, this month. And really, personally, I don't even really feel that much of a twinge to try to even play any horror games this year. I've never really felt super inspired to play horror games in October. I just don't get that spooky feeling. I like horror games all year round and horror movies all year round. I don't find anything special doing it in October. If anything, I find it cliche and kind of boring. Like, October is probably the best month to watch old cliche boring things like Puppet Master or something that's awful, that you know is awful, but you watch it every now and then, once in a while. October is probably a great month for that. Then sometimes there's a new movie worth watching in October to contrast that. Moving on, 4 new Apple Arcade games have been announced for November, including Wheel of Fortune Daily, Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders. What is Wheel of Fortune Daily? I know Wheel of Fortune has a mobile game where you can potentially win some actual money if you play it, but also I imagine it's full of ads or microtransactions. Yeah, it seems like this Wheel of Fortune Daily for Apple Arcade is going to not have any possibility of actually winning anything, which makes a lot of sense. This Texas Hold'em Poker, I imagine, also has no way of winning any kind of money or anything from it. Although you still have kind of gambly feeling games coming to Apple Arcade, which loses it some family friendly points, certainly. Let's see, Resident Evil 2 remake, I assume, is coming to iPhone, iPad, and Mac this year. It does seem like with the new iPhones and iPads chips, fairly modern games are now somehow being able to be ported to those devices. I guess the question in my mind is, what is the step that would make me start to feel like iPhone and iPad or Macintosh is actually a acceptable gaming platform? And they would just have to embrace gaming a lot more and support gaming a lot more on the Apple side, and I just don't think Apple has it in its ecosystem and its personality to actually support games that much. Some of these links or things I talked about before are just going to be kind of weird, such as the Epic Game Store talking about American McGee's Alice, seemingly fairly ignorant of the fact and the whole debacle that happened about a year ago, in which American McGee's tried to pitch for a third game in his Alice series and really didn't get anywhere with it, got rejected, gave up, and then for the most part has disappeared from the internet, sometimes occasionally showing pictures of his family on his YouTube channel, which was also what he heavily was growing and showing the gameplay coverage of the original Alice game. This is Alice Madness Returns screenshots. I went on a bigger rant about how American McGee specifically has some limitations on if he was to make a new Alice in Wonderland game, but he's not inherently incapable of making one. But things that would be iconic of what the Alice game series that's owned by Electronic Arts would have to be avoided. You'd have to go back to more traditional blonde hair, perhaps younger looking, not have a skull on the back, not have an Omega symbol, not have blood, maybe not have the black socks or the high heel boots. Anything that was added specifically to that game and unique to that game, and the two Alice games, you'd have to get away with. The Vorpal blade here, you could have a blade called the Vorpal blade, but you would have to change the way it looks, maybe change your eye color. But yeah, nothing really stops American McGee if he was actually capable of making games, which he isn't. He's at this point proven he's not even capable of pitching games. He's only capable of getting a lot of people hyped and excited, which he should not have done publicly. So publicly, he did it for at least a year straight, hyping people on the thought that it was going to happen when it never really was going to happen. But he also teased the idea that he would make a Wizard of Oz game, and that disappeared too. And he was selling his wife's products, Plushy Dreadfuls, during that whole time, and that's really all it was a long con to get people interested in Plushy Dreadfuls. Notice how this cutscene in Madness Returns also clips right through her finger there. I think a new American McGee's Alice game would almost certainly be censored and just not as much of an edgelord game as it really should be by EA and just by the ESRB in general. So it's probably better it didn't get made. In direct contrast to that, there was a new pinball table called Alice's Adventures that, according to pinball aficionados, has a pretty awful trailer. But in the trailer, you can definitely see that they have drawn Alice as basically she looks like an adult hooker in scantily clad blue dress. So you like Alice from Alice in Wonderland, Alice's Adventures. They're public domain, so you could certainly make something from that if you wanted to. But he wasn't really going to get that far. What was I looking for here? Here was the 35th anniversary of Prince of Persia, highlighting a lot of old games and the original Prince of Persia, and highlighting two games that are specifically unique in that this, I don't think, even is the Prince of Persia. This was made by a different company. This was the first attempt at the remake of Sands of Time, or the reboot of Prince of Persia after Sands of Time rebooted it, so I guess the third reboot there. But yeah, really all they had to do and needed to do was release the remake of Sands of Time by the 35th anniversary, and they failed miserably at that. And then we also talked about the ratings, so we can check the up-to-date ratings. 94% of critics on OpenCritic recommend Silent Hill 2. 87 score of the top critic average. So mainstream video game journalists, critics, video game critics in general are happy with Silent Hill 2. Still trying to jump around so we can just go through the Video Games Chronicles articles. We've gone almost 2 hours and I haven't even gone through them. Metal Gear Solid's Delta difficulty level will change based on whether the perspective is first person or third person. This is an older story. Horizon Zero Dawn has been delisted on the Epic Games Store ahead of the remaster release. I believe the remaster release is also $10 more expensive. Stalker 2's studio released a 90-minute documentary about finishing the game during Russia's invasion, which probably is not a great way to promote your game. It's probably a good documentary, but it's not something that is best targeted to gamers as much as it might be targeted to people in politics. People who might have an effective, might be able to affect the Russia-Ukraine invasion situation. Let's see, Silent Hill 2's ending was streamed on YouTube a week before the game was released. Mario and Rabbids lead and the Red Dead Redemption lead designer have formed a new studio called Day for Night. Diablo 4 will be PS5 Pro enhanced. And then Tencent and the Gilmo family were reportedly considering taking Ubisoft private. which, yeah, I think that is still in the cards. I've just got a ton of Gematsu articles next, and I imagine a lot of these are just not going to be super relevant, so we'll try and go through these fairly way. Palworld's early access for the PS5 is now available in Japan after a 10-day delay, I believe, after Nintendo specifically timed their, seems like, patent lawsuit around their launch. A rhythm game called Mash VP Revision for PC launches in early access on October 11th. These are the kind of anime VTuber type characters that come off as just kind of cliche and not well thought out. Is let's make two people and alternate neon blue with neon pink in several places and make them twins and show off a lot of skin, which ironically Twitch just updated its rules as far as VTubers showing off too much skin on Twitch. So a lot of people who are VTubers might have to re-update their models to put different costumes on their characters to show less skin. Weirdly though, the limitations don't apply to characters actually in games and don't apply uniformly, I think, to real people. Yoba Rai Detective Miasma Breaker debut trailer is available on Gematsu. And yeah, I know a lot of these are not going to have links that were clicked on, so I'm not even going to bother with any of that. Sugun Oi Supernatural Supermarket is coming to the PS4 and Switch on October 10th. It's currently available on PC. Let's see what that looks like on Steam. It is a DLC to some kind of visual novel, probably trying to catch the ride of the supermarket clone games. This game is rated very mostly positive. Looks like a collection of mini games, but these visuals certainly are not very appealing to me. Interesting. Just one more story or mini game. We've talked about this. Romancing Saga 2 Revenge of the Seven details more information on Gematsu. Killing Time Resurrected launches October 17th. Bleach Rebirth of Souls opening movie. Actually, a lot of these are going to be things we've already talked about, like on Friday, so once we get to that point I'm gonna move very quickly to close the rest of the tabs. This completely wrong assumption was reported on that Igataki Games was shut down when it wasn't, but they did the right thing editorial wise to leave the article up with the updates so people can get the updated information. A spaghetti anime mech tactical RPG called Nitrogen Omega has been announced for PC, which that is certainly a mouthful as far as what it's supposed to be. Although I don't get the spaghetti anime concept here. Is it that the characters have like long noodly limbs? I guess that would possibly be the case. Or is it because it is just a mess as far as how the narrative is told, very randomly twisted? these kinds of animation styles potentially might be very different in motion versus what it is in still screenshots. The procedurally generated characters and an art style, and I think you can figure it out pretty easily by just having wireframe characters with a different texture over them. That inherently means that the characters are likely not going to interact with other characters or objects on the screen much. So I would, from just looking at a little bit of that trailer, describe this more as a mecha, maybe mecha tournament battle game. Mecha tactical RPG does seem about right. Still not really sure where the spaghetti anime comes from on that. Goat Simulator 3 is coming to the PS4, Xbox One on October 24th. Some of these articles I think are new. We talked about a Shinobi movie being announced. I'm not sure. It feels like it may have been decades, 2 or 3 decades since the last Shinobi game came out. I think like the first Shinobi game was like an NES game. Let's see. Square Enix announces a strategy RPG called Ember Storia for iOS, Android, and PC. This would have been one of the games that Square Enix did not choose to cancel. Might be an indication of where they're moving their focus as far as more mobile games and less Final Fantasy. Famitsu review scores for issue 1869 gives Last Time I Saw You a 30 out of 40, and then Sky Ocean's Wings for Hire a pathetic 25 out of 40. House of Golf 2 is coming to the Switch this holiday with a Halloween update now available. Stalker Legends of the Zone trilogy for Switch launches October 31st. I'm not sure if you can get Stalker Legends of the Zone on Steam, but you can just buy each of the 3 games on Steam. Of course, I also would have to know the actual order. Shadow of Chernobyl, Clear Sky, then Call of Pripyat. I'm not sure Stalker is even the game I'm wanting to play. There's a couple games that are very close to that. The Alarmo does seem to be plugged in. That is one thing to warn about compared to the small smart alarm clocks, is that they are battery controlled and they connect via Wi-Fi, which is not a great system. It'd be better if they were thread controlled or Zigbee controlled instead, but by connecting through Wi-Fi, it kills batteries a little fast, once every 3 to 6 months. You can spend another $20 to get modified adapters that will let you plug it back in, but they don't have like USB ports to put power into it or anything like that. So you'd have to actually buy the kind of adapter that has fake AA batteries and put that in. And when you do that, you may very well struggle to put the back of the battery faceplate back on. It is now more of a thing where in the United States too, that anything with a battery in it has to be screwed down if it's targeted to younger kids. Just, you cannot take the batteries out and replace them without using a screwdriver on it. Which that in part has sped up the process of many devices having built-in rechargeable batteries for no good reason, or USB connectors for no good reason, which the USB connectors in particular are saving these kinds of device developers quite a bit of money because they are now no longer including cords sometimes, and almost always never including plug transformers. So if you're eliminating any majorly large transformer and eliminating cords, you're saving potentially $5 on every device that can go in your pocket. Looks like the Japanese trailer here is completely different from the American one, but I wouldn't be surprised if it actually isn't. No, it really looks like it. I guess one thing you'd look here is, notice that none of these are particularly young kids. They're targeting like 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds at the youngest. Perhaps that's just because they don't want to put really young kids on a bed and a mattress and sleepwear for their commercial. But also perhaps because the price point is so large. It seems to imply that the motion sensor is actually behind the screen, which that would be more of a millimeter wave presence sensor than an passive infrared detector. If it was a passive infrared direct detector, oh, this changes color up here too, then it would have to be seeing it from up here. But it could also just be some very basic infrared transmitters and receivers just all around the device, even in this rubber part, instead of perhaps at the tops and edges. We've got plenty of space with a circular faceplate like that. I would be interested to see one of these taken apart to just see what's inside it, but I imagine it's not too much. I would assume it's just a more modern version of the ESP32 line of chipsets, and if that's the case, it probably only connects via 2.5 gigahertz connections, which is fine for an alarm clock. Have a little bit of flash memory, and that's about it. It would have to have audio driver setup and hardware chipsets to run a speaker, a little bit of an amplifier, and then a chip for the motion sensing. But that might all be one chip combined, really. Moving on, Minecraft launches November 14th. Survivors like roguelite first-person shooter Bloodshed has been announced for PC. Hunter x Hunter and Nin X Impact character trailer is available on Gamatsu. Let's see, PlayStation Plus catalogs. Amanda the Adventurer 2 launches October 22nd, which I believe is a horror game. Metaphor ReFantasio's launch trailer. A dance-based combat action adventure game called Minteria has been announced for PC. Actually, this isn't a terrible situation that I'm going back through all of these, because there clearly are some games here that I did not see. Like, I made this whole new macro and then I just assumed it was going to work, and I haven't gone back to fix any of its problems, which it does seem like it has some problems. It does seem like it might be skipping some stories. I don't know how it's skipping stories, but I should spend some more time and polish my product better for my own use. Retreat to Eden is coming to the PS5 and 4 on October 30th and the Xbox Series X. Yeah. We're starting to get announcements of more and more games as we approach the Black Friday. This Pathologic 3 sounds like it's going to be as weird as Pathologic 1 and 2, but maybe might be a little bit more playable. In a weird way though, I kind of feel like playing Pathologic 3, if it is more playable, would just be a justification to not play 1 or 2 because they're still rough. I could see them rebooting the whole series and being a little less surreal than what they are. Pathologics as a series of games is probably at the peak of what is tolerable insanity and surrealness. Whereas anything above that is just gonna be nonsense, at least in my perception. Dino Punk, the Cap Cops Adventure. Yeah. In Sync launches November 12th. It's a cooperative puzzle game. Interesting. Kind of a different art style to it. Not sure I really trust that art style for that kind of game. I'm not even reading a lot of these. Neptunia Riders versus Doggos launches January 28th in the West, including magazine and digital deluxe editions. The Doggos, I don't know what the Doggos aspect on that really is. Oh, I know the Riders is you have Neptunia characters in a spin-off game riding motorcycles, but I'm not seeing anything here that actually seems to show any dogs. Magazine showing off virtual motorcycles. Cheesecake covers. It is nice though to see that Neptunia is going as hard as they can with targeting the audience of Neptunia fans who have always wanted the characters to be a little bit more fun-loving and lewd, instead of somehow trying to squish itself into being more family-friendly for a game series that's not good enough to really be family-friendly. Let's see. Dun Jungle in early access on October 22nd. Songs of Conquest coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series. And Goat Simulator Remastered launching November 7th, which gives me a great excuse to not play the original Goat Simulator, although I'm not sure there's that much of a reason that I ever would play Goat Simulator. Okay. That does not bring us to the end of the show, even though we are 2 hours into this. I guess I could end the show if I didn't look at any of the new games that came out on Steam. But the effort here was to cover games on Linux, which, yeah. The Last Plague Blight is in early access. Creative Assembly has confirmed Alien Isolation is getting a sequel. Itch is hosting another queer Halloween Stories bundle for 2024. The desktop KDE Plasma version 6.2 has been released with improved Wayland color management. So that is great, but it is also worth pointing out that KDE Desktop is not up to version 6, I think, at all on the Steam Deck, because they don't have Wayland direct support. Wayland being the long wanted and long awaited replacement for X11 for Linux, that is how images in Windows draw themselves. It's basically like DirectX but for application windows instead of for games, and also for Linux. Color management is helpful though, and it certainly is good to see progress being made, and we know Valve is particularly trying to push for Wayland to be improved very quickly. KDE in particular is not really getting any real support from Valve or Steam, but the fact that they used KDE in the desktop mode of the Steam Deck has given them, I think, a lot of attention. I believe KDE is probably somewhat closer to Plasma version 5.27. In particular, I could see SteamOS. SteamOS version 1 and 2 didn't even run on Arch Linux, which is the text-based disk operating system part of Linux there. So that they made major changes going from SteamOS 1 and 2 to 3. I could see them also making major changes to go away from KDE Plasma. I don't know what they'd really go to, however, but they need a tiling operating system in particular for the Steam Deck, and I'm not sure KDE Plasma is actually moving towards enabling or supporting tiling directly. Tiling being that when new windows are open, they tile and space themselves correctly, compared to a non-tiling Windows system like this, which is just cascading new windows fairly willy-nilly. That does not work on a Steam Deck where the screen space is very low and you have a pop-up keyboard that needs to move windows automatically out of the way so you can actually type in any kind of form or password fields. There's still a lot of room for improvement. Speaking of improvement, GameScope has gotten improved ROG Ally support, hinting at more progress at SteamOS. GameScope is the proprietary, I believe, Valve code to let Steam games translate their DirectX commands from Windows into Wayland commands and depict the images. GameScope obviously being focused on games specifically. But the fact that they're going out of the way to make sure the ROG Ally works does seem like they are perhaps at this point overly focused on supporting ROG Ally with the next version of SteamOS. Space Marine 2 fixes the online Steam Deck online for the Steam Deck, but you may need the launch options on desktop Linux. Let's see. Pairs and Perils combines deck building and dungeon crawling with a card matching memory game. Well, that certainly would be the thing that would lose my attention, is the card matching memory game. Proton Experimental fixes issues for Final Fantasy 16 and multiple other games. Let's see, there's a bit of a list here. Proton updates are coming fairly quickly, but they are also targeting specific games in the hopes that one fix for specific games, like Fallout New Vegas here, might also fix many other smaller games. That would be, I assume, what they're hoping. Or they may very well just know that Fallout New Vegas is very popular and fixing that game is higher priority than fixing a game that only 5 people have ever played. Let's see, Zoom Platform Store announces a new tool to run Windows games on Linux with Proton. I imagine this is not through your standard Linux operating system, though. I haven't heard of Zoom Platform. Red Dead Redemption and Undead Nightmare potentially should run on the Steam Deck just fine. In reality, they probably won't, because they very likely will have some weirdness from Rockstar added to them. Block Factory is basically a Lego factory automation game with a diorama building, according to Gaming on Linux. Steam Beta has fixed an issue with game recording, remote play, and more. Let's see. SDL, Software Defined Library, I guess is what that stands for. 3.1.3 stable ABI preview has been released. I'm not sure what this is actually talking about. What is SDL? It's a cross-platform development library designed to provide low-level access to audio, keyboard, mouse, and joystick and graphics hardware on many device platforms like Linux, Mac OS, Windows, iOS, and Android. So, yeah, an upgrade of that is just an upgrade on low-level access. Notice here that they're promoting good documentation above everything else, which is always very helpful. So even if you want to help like programs or make video games one day, just getting experience writing documentation can be very helpful and could be the thing that gets you a job, is just being really good at writing documentation, even if you're only slightly mediocre at programming and thinking up new concepts. Example programs. It seems like they may very well just be adding camera APIs for the first time. So that's big changes. Version 3 is a major number change, and so yeah, I could see them adding a lot of new features. Of course, they kind of changed what they were talking about. They're talking about version 3.0, I think, as far as what this list is, when version 3.1.3 stable preview has just been released. Let's see. Descent 3 Pichu engine is a new open source build focused on quality of life improvements. FEX EMU version 2410, bringing out some important fixes for gaming on, I assume that's AMD ARC 64, AA ARC 64. I should just read it as written. Let's see. Cunward 2s is a game we already kind of looked at. Fanatical gives you another chance to build up your Resident Evil collection. This is pretty much an advertisement. Then you can explore a top secret uranium mine in the retro FPS Kvark. And then there's now a Steam game about squeezing eggs. Interesting. And it isn't interesting. Alright, so that is all the gaming on Linux stuff, which means we can move now to gamingdeveloper.com and we'll see what happens there. Oh, we got some other gaming on Linux stuff. Steam Beta gets big game recording improvements, plus Steam Deck SteamOS 3.6.16 beta is coming out. With Bluetooth 6.0 coming out, it does introduce another issue in that Bluetooth has never been major number, minor number, and then bug fix number. It's always been just major number, minor number in how it has listed itself. Most people, the newest Bluetooth really available is 5.3. But yeah, there is just this danger that when they get to Bluetooth 6.5, they probably should just skip over to Bluetooth 7 and not have Bluetooth 6.6 just for the 666 mark of the devil, mark of the beast controversy around it. But yeah. But yeah, you get into a problem there. And arguably most of the times minor numbers really shouldn't be so rigid that you're waiting for 3.9 before you come out with a 4.0. By the time you're at anything 0.4 or 5, you should be thinking about the next major number release, and you should start working towards that next major number release. Maybe it will take you a long time to reach that, but yeah, 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, you're going a little long in the tooth. And certainly the secondary number could be above 10 too, if you wanted it to be. So you could have a 3.10, 3.20, 3.100 really, if it made any sense to do that. It usually doesn't though. Doom was ported to run almost entirely on AMD GPUs. This is a older story, and I think that is pretty much what's going to happen with the rest of these stories. So I think we can go ahead and close them. So yeah, these are older stories. And that's gonna bring me to gamedeveloper.com links. Again, these are all out of order. So see, that's in particular what threw me so much on this whole setup, is just how many massive numbers of links are still around that I may not have opened any actual articles from gamedeveloper.com. Let's just go news. The latest news. Yeah, I'm not sure we've actually seen any news stories here. Washington State is doing it to juice the local game development. itch.io creators has the site is prepared for a possible retirement of the .io domain, which is probably a smart move to get rid of the .io domains. Although websites in general have created this whole weird situation where there's not enough websites out there that are good, and then there's way too many people sitting on website domain names and trying to profit off of them. Let's just open up articles that I think we haven't talked about. So Paradox leaders say that overconfidence led to undisciplined decision making. Thrones of Liberty nets over 3 million players in its launch week. Ex-Humble Games staffer form a new publisher called Good Games Group. That being said, I'm not sure that means that they can come back and republish any of the Humble games that were removed, if any Humble games actually were removed. You know, a lot of times you have these splinter corporations form, and it doesn't really work any better under a new people thinking they can be the leader. In a lot of ways, I guess the thought is you could take it as if somebody within a corporation could have stepped up and been the leader and helped prevent a company from going the wrong direction, why didn't they do it then? Maybe in a lot of cases there are obnoxious managers who wouldn't listen to good advice, but I think a lot of times too there's just a lack of good leadership in general everywhere. And it's almost coming down for video game publishers to just a tax dodge to create publishing companies and then run them into the ground. There is a report that Roblox inflated user numbers and downplayed the child predator presence to investors, which, yeah, I'm sure there is a report about that. Cryptic Studios laying off staff at the end of October. The .io is the colonial domain of the Chagos Islands, I assume that's how you pronounce that, which the UK recently relinquished its control of / claim for. I imagine not that much is going to change, but in general, itch.io really should just be itch.io.com or itch.io or just itch.com if they can afford that. Let's see, the Washington State Government's Chamber of Commerce wants the state's creative economy humming along. Interesting, so this might be a good article talking about how they're potentially going to try to see that come to be the case. Alright, so none of these are going to be curated as far as the games that came out on Steam, and I don't think a lot of these are going to be in chronological order. So we've got a tall order for looking at all the games. So what I want to do is go ahead and pause the recording, take a little bit of a break, then we'll come back and handle all of the stuff. This should be the end of the news, but please just leave it playing for the sake of my watch time. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Also happy to see I really haven't dropped any frames today, so all that has been fixed. This is going to be a long one, particularly if, because I've reset my computer, it turns out that every single tab is going to have to reload. But I will try my very best to burn through all these games. This doesn't really catch my attention, but I guess I'll give it a chance. Meanwhile, I did start to do some follow list cleanup manually a couple weeks ago, but any real progress I made there has probably been lost at this point. I still haven't integrated a consistent follow list cleanup that needs to be handled. Probably off screen. I wish there was a better system too as far as doing follow list cleanups, but there's always new games and there's never really extra time. But yeah, I also would have to admit I would love to find some kind of life guru who could look at my schedules after Monday, Wednesday, and Friday when I stream and just figure out what would actually work for me as far as here's something you can do to be productive versus taking a huge break and doing nothing, usually watching streaming services or something. Which I watched a couple episodes of a really wild show. It's called The Bear, maybe Bear Contessa. I think it's took their idea from the name of Jamie Oliver, the naked chef. But in this show, which looks like it was either a public access channel in like France or Canada, or I don't know, it might have been a low budget freebie show before Amazon bought freebie. You have a guy and a girl, and they are completely naked except for wearing an apron. The guy is wearing an apron that covers below his belly. The girl is wearing an apron that covers her breasts but shows a lot of cleavage. Inherently, what this seems to do is really just show off their butts in very specific scenes and shots that they have designed to almost certainly censor it and just titillate on it. But there's, well, that concept does exist as far as a fetish, and particularly in Japanese culture, the naked apron. It's almost always, when depicted, every time I've seen it, it's always been depicted that it would be like a lady in underwear and then topless with an apron on, which, yeah, that's as far as I think most people would really want to go. Is that you really wouldn't want people completely bare bottomed cooking food. There's just a sanity aspect to that, and I know that most places where there are nudist camps, this looks interesting, require the nudist who want to walk around naked, completely naked all the time, they are required to wear clothes when they are doing any kind of kitchen duty. At the very least, I think they're required to wear bottoms, but general safety, if you're cooking anything that might splatter, is you should be wearing a shirt just for safety. You don't want to scar yourself or like hurt yourself terribly by spilling something on you or just splattering grease on yourself. The models, unfortunately, aren't particularly attractive, so the butts of the people aren't like porno actor very noticeable butts. They're just normal people's butts, like from the time it was made. And some of the camera angles are set down very low, which makes it just feel like you're looking at a voyeur cam, which is very sleazy. Of course, the most offensive thing about this show that I only watched like half of one episode and half of another is the cooking's bad and the food's pointless. They're just not really doing a good job of showing you how to cook food. If the premise is we're going to bait and switch you and think you're going to see a lot of nudity, but in reality we're just going to teach you to cook, well, they fail to also teach you to cook. Garage flipper. They try to tie the food in to be romantic style food, but there really isn't that much. And Seinfeld has a very good episode of George Costanza crossing the lines, combining the pleasure of eating good food and the pleasure of making love, and that backfiring in George Costanza's life terribly by crossing the streams, I believe was the joke they made. Ghostbusters reference. And yeah, it's just kind of a silly premise that doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't get extreme. It has a bunch of dumb, goofy skits. It seems like per episode. It seems like they didn't know what they were doing. It seems like they hired just random actors willing to be naked on stage to make a weird cooking show. It might very well be one of those shows. There was this, like, I think it was in Canada, an entire 24-hour cable channel where it was just all naked all the time, and Naked News certainly did prove that to work fairly well. Of course, the premise in Naked News is that they start off clothes, and as they're telling the story, they're slowly removing clothes, both men and women, keeping your attention. That's probably as far as the gimmick can go. But yeah, definitely don't feel like cooking in the nude makes sense. Sure, if you want to cook topless with an apron, that's one thing. But you're talking aprons are actual protective devices, too, for an actual reason. And on a bigger roll, as I'll stop talking about this very weird show that I found and wasted too much time watching, sure, is you don't have to combine pleasures, you know? It just is not a need to make everything be about everything or be sexualized in general. Just having a good steak is good enough. You know, having a good salad might be good enough if that's what you're into. I guess to transition somewhat away from that, I also got a milkshake that was from a coffee shop. I've been experimenting with what coffee shops can actually deliver milkshakes, which is obviously not what they're focused on. And this milkshake just was not like a milkshake. It was a milky ice smoothie, effectively. Really too cold, giving me brain freeze. The foam on top, I did not stir it in at all, so getting foam seemed to be pointless. And the place I got it from was also asking for a tip through a drive-thru, and yeah, I'm not comfortable being asked for a tip. Those kinds of things. I imagine Starbucks does that all the time, but I don't go to Starbucks. I found another one. It was actually really good as far as making a milkshake. So I'm trying to figure out which of the companies might be great places if they happen to be on the way. Of course, I don't want caffeine or coffee. I hate the taste of coffee. There might be some kind of subtle flavor of coffee if done perfectly that I could tolerate, but everything I've always tasted makes it feel like it is bitter and overcooked. Imagine if it was just like fresh ground coffee that had just been like plucked off the vine, or whatever you would call that. It might be a lot better. Might be a sweeter, less bitter flavor, but that's not what you're likely going to get. But yeah, and there is a lot of old games here that, like, if this is October 1, I could probably start just closing all of these, because that's 8 days ago. I'm still in a situation where yeah, that's gonna be a no. Now, I have a lot of YouTube shorts to upload, and they've introduced this new YouTube themes for YouTube Shorts, and I need to investigate that a little bit more to figure out what that is. As far as I think they may be called templates instead of themes. That might change the way YouTube Shorts overall work. It kind of felt like what they were doing was encouraging people to just steal other YouTube Shorts creators' idea, and that may be very well the move, is that as they are just trying to rip off TikTok, maybe the nature of TikTok is that one TikTok artist steals concepts and ways TikToks are made from the next over and over again. This is just a tower defense game. Here's that X Squeezer game they were talking about that people are saying very positive things about. The problem with ever since Frog Fractions was released, any game like that that's rated very positively feels like there might be some kind of secret deeper game in it, when in reality it's almost certainly more a case that a bunch of trolls are just rating it positively for no good reason. I'm also not big into any of the Thanksgiving season spice lattes, October, Halloween spice pumpkin stuff. There are good foods like just basic pumpkin pie, or pumpkin filling pie is really what people are looking for. But then they have gotten really crazy about adding pumpkin spice to lots of things that never would have made sense for it to be in there in the first place. Pumpkins obviously would be harvested in the past around this time and eaten because they would go rotten otherwise. So it would only live up to the needs of consuming them for sustenance that people would design recipes and food that you would eat with pumpkins. And the fact that there just aren't that many recipes or foods that work well with pumpkins definitely tells you something. Nobody's trying very hard to make pumpkin biscuits or pumpkin stuffing or anything like that. It's just standard pumpkin pie, which adds a bunch of either syrup or sugar to it, covering up the flavor. Maybe you make a pumpkin bread, but that's pretty much the extent to it. Pumpkins have a lot of seeds and not a lot of meat on their bones as far as fruit that's edible. I think we might be close to the end. Wow. Well, we burned through that fairly quickly. I do wonder if there are several games there that I've already made YouTube Shorts on it for, but I'll deal with that later. And that's good because that ends this recording, which is exactly what I would want to have happen here. I don't want to go too long. We started off late today anyways. So that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and keep on watching. Thanks.